This is a journey into the heart of a chilling legend, a true story that defies all logic and has baffled experts for over 6 decades. Our tale begins in the late 1950s, an era defined by Soviet ambition and a boundless belief in human resilience. In this climate of progress, a group of 9 students and recent graduates, all seasoned ski tourists from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, set out on a winter expedition. They were an ambitious bunch, led by a charismatic and determined 23-year-old named Igor Dyatlov. Their mission was to complete a challenging route to the summit of Otorten Mountain, a trek so arduous it was designated a Category 3, the highest level of difficulty for a winter expedition in the Soviet Union. Their success would grant them a Master of Sport ranking, a prestigious honor in Soviet society. On January 23, 1959, they embarked on their journey, fueled by youthful optimism and a shared passion for adventure. They were well-equipped and highly skilled. They documented every step of their journey through photos and diary entries, painting a vivid picture of camaraderie and excitement. Their final destination was the snow-covered peak of Otorten, but their path would lead them to an infamous mountain whose name in the local Mansi language chillingly translates to Dead Mountain, Kholat Syakhl. The very name now seems like a grim prophecy. What they didn't know was that their expedition would end in a horrific and inexplicable tragedy, a mystery so profound that it continues to captivate and haunt the world. This is the truth behind the Dyatlov Pass incident. The group's journey was a race against the brutal elements of the Urals. Their final diary entries, written just days before their deaths, reveal a mix of determination and a playful, sarcastic humor. On February 1st, they began their final push towards Otorten, but a harsh blizzard forced them to make a strategic error. Instead of camping in the sheltered forest below, they decided to set up their tent on the exposed, open slope of Kholat Syakhl, just a few hundred meters from the summit. This decision, intended to save time for the final ascent, would prove fatal. When the group failed to return by their scheduled date of February 12th, the alarm bells began to sound. However, this was not unusual for such expeditions, and the initial search was slow to start. It was only on February 20th, when family members began raising the alarm, that a large-scale search and rescue operation was launched. The Soviet military and civil authorities joined forces to comb the desolate mountain range. On February 26th, the search team's worst fears were realized. They discovered the hiker's tent, partially buried in snow. The scene was one of bewildering chaos. The tent had been sliced open from the inside, with 2 long diagonal cuts. Inside, everything was perfectly preserved: backpacks, food supplies, and all their winter gear, including the heavy coats and boots. This suggested a sudden, overwhelming threat that gave them no time to prepare. A series of footprints, belonging to people who were mostly barefoot or in socks, led away from the tent and towards the thick, dark forest below. The footprints were not hurried, but they were not calm either. They revealed a strange limping pattern, suggesting some of the hikers were already injured. The first 2 bodies were found under a large cedar tree nearly a mile from the tent. They were almost completely undressed, wearing only their underwear. Their hands were scraped and bruised, and broken branches on the tree suggested they had desperately tried to climb it, perhaps to gain a vantage point or find shelter. A small, pathetic fire pit lay beside them, a testament to a final, futile attempt at warmth. The next 3 bodies, Dyatlov among them, were found scattered on the slope, as if they had tried to crawl back to the tent. They had all died from hypothermia, their bodies arranged in a way that defied explanation. The investigation took a turn from tragic to terrifying when the remaining 4 bodies were discovered in a deep snow-covered ravine 2 months later, in May. They had suffered unimaginable and brutal injuries that were not consistent with any natural cause of death. Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles had a massive fractured skull, the kind of injury that would require an immense amount of force. Semyon Zolotarov had multiple fractured ribs, as if he had been crushed by a great weight. Ludmila Bubinina had the most gruesome injuries of all. Her ribs were broken, and, most horrifyingly, her eyes and her tongue were completely missing. Her jaw was also fractured. The medical examiner concluded that her tongue was likely removed by a massive, powerful force, not an animal. Alexander Koletovov had fractured skull and massive internal injuries, yet his body showed no external signs of a struggle. Adding to the bizarre findings, some of the bodies and their clothing had a strange, yellowish-orange skin tone that pathologists could not explain. More disturbingly, forensic experts discovered that the clothing of a few of the hikers, particularly those found in the ravine, contained high levels of radiation. Where did this radiation come from in the middle of a remote mountain pass? The Soviet authorities in their final report ruled the deaths as death from a compelling natural force, a vague and perplexing conclusion that only fueled the mystery. The case was quickly and quietly classified and sealed for decades. Over the decades, countless theories, both plausible and outlandish, have been proposed to explain the Dyatlov Pass incident. No single theory can account for all the bizarre and contradictory pieces of this puzzle. The avalanche theory. This is the most widely accepted scientific explanation. Proponents argue that a small, localized slab avalanche came down the mountain, terrifying the hikers and forcing them to flee their tent in a panic. The blunt force injuries, they suggest, could have been caused by the pressure of the snow. However, this theory is challenged by a mountain of counter-evidence. There was no visible evidence of an avalanche on the slope. The tent poles were still standing, and the tent itself was only partially collapsed, not crushed. Furthermore, why would the hikers not return to their perfectly functional tent after the danger had passed? Modern analysis has shown the slope was not steep enough for a typical avalanche, leaving this theory with more questions than answers. The military theory. This is perhaps the most popular conspiracy theory. It suggests the hikers stumbled into a secret Soviet military test site. This would explain the radiation on their clothing, the sudden nature of their deaths, and the extreme secrecy surrounding the case. A possible scenario involves a test of a low-yield nuclear bomb or some kind of infrasound weapon that could disorient and incapacitate the hikers, causing them to flee in a panic. The strange injuries could have been the result of the pressure wave. Some have even claimed that rocket fragments were found in the area, leading to speculation that they were killed to cover up a failed missile test. This theory seems to explain the unexplainable, but hard evidence remains elusive. The infrasound theory. A lesser-known but highly compelling theory suggests a rare atmospheric phenomenon was responsible. Strong winds hitting the peak of Kolatsyako could have created a vortex street, generating low-frequency sound waves known as infrasound. These sounds, below the range of human hearing, have been scientifically proven to cause feelings of intense fear, panic, nausea, and disorientation. This could explain why the hikers fled their camp in a state of terror. The panic, combined with the freezing temperatures, would lead to irrational behavior and eventual hypothermia. The severe injuries, however, would still be a mystery. The mystical and paranormal theories. This is where the story enters the realm of the truly bizarre. Other hikers in a different part of the Ural Mountains reported seeing strange orange spheres of light flying in the sky on the night of the incident. This led to speculation about UFOs or extraterrestrial involvement. Some believe the group was frightened by an unknown supernatural force. The missing tongue, the strange skin color, and the utter terror of their flight from the tent are elements that continue to fuel these theories, suggesting that some things are beyond human comprehension.
Over 60 years have passed since the Dyatlov group perished, but their story continues to haunt researchers, historians, and true crime enthusiasts around the world. Every new theory attempts to stitch together the pieces of a fragmented and illogical puzzle. But no single version, neither scientific, military, or mystical, can fully explain all the chilling details. What forced them to cut open their tent and face certain death in the freezing cold? What caused such devastating internal injuries with no external signs of a struggle? And what was the secret that the Soviet government was so determined to hide? The mystery of the Dyatlov Pass remains one of the greatest and most terrifying enigmas of our time.